I'm Diego Cortez with Adam Schoenfeld. Welcome to The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. And Steve Zolotow is a guy who's been on the poker scene for a long time, starting at the Mayfair in New York, playing in the big games with Doyle and Chip, and playing in the World Series at Binions and here.
He's a New York legend.
New York legend and a Las Vegas legend. I mean, he's been around the scene and is a great storyteller and observer, interesting guy.
He's one of the most interesting characters. I'm looking forward to speaking with him.
You've got a bracelet in Pot Limit Hold'em, but what people don't know is you've got a bracelet in Chinese poker and you won a Hall of Fame tournament in Chinese poker. So no one has accomplished as much in the tournament arena in Chinese poker.
You've shut down Chinese poker. No one will play it anymore in tournaments.
Well, it's not really a poker game. I mean, it's really a card arrangement game, so it doesn't deserve to be part of the poker ranking system.
A lot of people don't realize that until recently, and still to some degree, sometimes the biggest game and the best players are playing the Chinese poker. You go into the poker room and you'd think that the big names would all be looking for suckers playing no limit or pot limit, and they're all playing with each other, just playing Chinese poker, which on the surface is a game that doesn't have a lot of tactics or strategy or psychology the way the other poker games do, but where there's some subtle edges, and obviously you know something about it.
Well, it's a good gambling game, and most games that you would play while you're waiting for people to show up to get a big game going are heads up. If you wanted to play gin or claviage, it's two-handed. So now if you get to 3 or 4 people, Chinese is a perfect game to fill in until other people show up. So it's a very good thing, because there's a tendency in poker rooms, 2 or 3 people show up looking for a game, and they wait around an hour and no game. Now they leave, and now the next 2 show up. And if you'd had all 5 there at the same time, bingo, you'd have a game. But you have to keep the first couple trapped until the next group show up.
I mean, maybe what it points out in your case, especially, and maybe kind of the, not the older player, but the more veteran player would be the way I put it, is that you've got a lot of no-limit specialists now, a lot of guys who've come on, they've learned to play on the internet. You're really an all-around gambler. I think what really characterizes all the guys that you played with, let's say at the Mayfair in New York, and when you first came out to Las Vegas, is that you guys are playing all the games. If there's gambling going on, and of course there's also sports betting and other types of gambling, you're playing all the games and wherever there's money to be made. And that maybe is being lost a little bit, where guys are specialists in one game, and that's where there's 16 tables simultaneous of no limit hold'em, and I can make a lot of money at that. And I'm not going to just go into the room and see who's around and what they want to play and adapt.
I'll tell you one of my favorite gambling stories from years ago. I had a friend, Howie the Horse, who was a very good poker player. He played stud poker in a game I played in every night. And every day he'd go out to the track and lose his winnings. And every night he'd come back and he'd win. And somehow over the course of time, the game at night got tougher and tougher. Some bad players went broke. I was in the game now. And of course he was still losing at the track. And finally he went on the inevitable losing streak at poker. And he had to do something. He was desperate, so he got a job as a bartender during the day, so he couldn't go out to the track. And we all went into the bar and we're sitting around drinking, and he said, you have to learn that the candy store isn't always open. And a lot of these guys today think the candy store is open, and the candy store is no limit hold'em. And right now, from the time they started televising whole cards, no limit hold'em was it. Or you could say the time, let's say, blackjack first came to Atlantic City and they had early surrender. There are periods of time where the candy store is open.
Yep.
And you see so many of these guys, and they think it's always going to be open, and they blow off their money at sports or at... they don't save their money for gambling purposes.
Right.
And for sure you've seen over the years that different people, let's say like Larry Flint, likes to play stud. Only play stud, really. So if you aren't a stud player, it cuts you off completely from playing in that game.
You can't tell them, you come play my game, I'll be on the internet at 10 o'clock tonight.
When you were, let's say, a California player for years, first they played high draw, then they played low draw, and then all of a sudden they were playing all these other games. If you were the best draw player in the world and you didn't have a clue about hold'em or stud, you were just shut out of all the great action and all the money that could be made. And the people who really have survived for a long time, you go back to Doyle, Chip Reese, those people, they could play backgammon, they could play gin, they could play every kind of poker, and if they didn't know it, they'd learn it. I mean, when we first started playing what eventually evolved into the big game at Bellagio now, we were at Mirage, and it was first half stud, half hold'em, both limit. Then we added in some high-low games. And I would say for the first month or two after we added in Omaha 8 or better and stud 8 or better, I almost never lost, and I felt like I was the best player in the game.
The candy store was open.
The candy store was open, absolutely. The next month or two after that, suddenly Chip and Doyle were playing as well as I played, and the month or two after that, they were probably better than I was.
Right.
So it's
they're calling you up to show up. For the game.
Yeah. I mean, it's very funny how, people learn and people are good at all the games. I mean, No Limit Hold'em has always been a dead or dying game, except that it worked so well for television. It was a perfect game for television, which resurrected it. I mean, you would even go, the whole year there would be no Limit Hold'em games. World Series time, there might be one or two, and most of the guys were, in their 80s or their 70s playing it.
Right.
None of the kids played.
When I started playing, there was none. There was no big bet poker in New York, at least, where I started. And then it came out of nowhere with TV, as you mentioned.
Not only what you described. Not only did that take place at the World Series, but you had to get there early because by the second or third week, the weak players had gone broke.
Yeah.
So the key thing was show up on the first day ready to go because their bankrolls wouldn't even last till the last event.
Well, I've always said there are two good times if someone is thinking of coming out for a week or 10 days of the World Series. It's the first week before the really bad players go broke, and the last week when the big tournament is on, when a lot of high rollers come to town.
Just for that.
For that. So you have, the middle period can be very dry.
But it seems, one thing you were talking about before, which is about people's leaks, and obviously that was a big part of the gambling world, that guys were great poker players, but they'd have a ton of other leaks. Kind of this newer generation, I think, is ahead of the game in the sense that they're a lot sharper about, somewhat maybe closed-minded about always needing to have an edge, but then at the same time, by always needing to have an edge, not blowing their bankrolls or their winnings on silly things.
I mean, that's a thin line that you have to walk along.
Right. And
you can cross over a little bit, but not too far. I mean, the old saying is, you have to give action to get action. Mm-hmm. You have to be in these situations. I had a conversation with Chip Reese years ago when, I came in and it's Chip and Doyle and Chow and maybe one other really strong player, and the four of them were playing. And they played for about 4 or 5 hours. The game broke up, and Chip and I went out to eat. And we're talking, and I said, Chip, I know you're a really great player, but why would you play in a game like that? And he said, well, son, if you don't open up the store, how are you going to get customers? And you do have to be willing to do some things. If somebody, like let's say a golf hustler might lose a little at poker because he knows the guy is going to go out and play golf with him the next morning. And you find some of the guys still are, Phil Ivey, Eric Lindgren, they love to bet on everything.
They're gamblers.
They're old school gamblers, even though they're young guys. But some of the really young guys...
But they're not even the guys I mean the young guys.
Some of the really young guys won't ever give up any action where they don't think they have a big edge now.
I mean, this is to your point.
But that's funny. I was listening to Brandon talking before, and one of the things he was saying, well, I was playing on this show, I guess it was high-stakes poker. Right. I didn't have any interesting hands, and I was winning. But in Australia, I was losing, and suddenly there were all these interesting hands. And I was thinking, it's funny how you find all these, you start losing, and this hand looks pretty good. This is an interesting spot. I can love you. So it does change. I mean, I've written some things for Card Player on bankroll management and on keeping records. And one of the things I've found when I've had friends who I've forced to keep records, or students, if you use the word students, that almost everybody who starts to keep records finds a pattern, which is when they're winning, the sessions are shorter than when they're losing.
Yeah.
And you see you see
should
guys.
Be the reverse, of course.
Yeah, of course. When you're playing well, when they're playing badly, when the game is good, you should put in as many hours as you can. When it's the reverse, either the game is bad, or you're off your game, or you're tired, or even if you're playing perfectly, they're winning and they're not going to go on tilt. That's a good time to go see a movie or say, well, I'm done for the day. And almost nobody can bring themselves to do it.
I used to always wonder, because I'd be playing down at Blatch when I'd see like the big game going on, or even the medium big games, when they're playing 500, 1,000 or whatever, 1,000, 2,000, and every player I knew was a strong player. I mean, this wasn't even where they had some celebrity or some wealthy drop in. I mean, these were like all professional, good players, and I'd always wonder, well, what's really going on? It wasn't just opening the store. I mean, they'd be playing all night or the next day, and I'd ask guys who I trusted, like, well, what's going on? I mean, these are all good players, and finally I figured out that these are all good players when they're winning. Not everyone's a good player when they're losing. That's like a big part of
a
poker
huge
and
part
keeping the games going.
And that's where the quitting when you're losing
right.
automatically saves you from the disaster. I mean, we know a lot of people, both online and live, who, when they're winning, are 99%, and when they're losing, are 59%.
Yeah.
I mean, you see them on, the Full Tilt pros play, and you see in the chat box, this guy really sucks. He's bought in 45 times.
The worst thing that's ever happened in a lot of ways, even though it's a lot of fun, but the worst thing that's ever happened is the ability to, keep these databases full of information about who's playing well and who's playing poorly, because first of all, it embarrasses people, that you see in the chat, you're negative 36% already, one guy wins a hand, they're like, no wonder you're down 460,000 this month, and stuff like that. And also it alerts people to who the good players are and who the bad players are. I mean, this, all of that is interesting from a voyeuristic standpoint, but it's bad for the game because it alerts people to who the good players are, it embarrasses the bad player. I mean, it creates all sorts of dynamics.
Yeah, I'd be interested in your take on the chat in general. The other night I was playing on Full Tilt, and I was next to a kid. I found out it was a kid. He had one of those F-Tops champion jerseys, and I got seated at his table. This is in a tournament, and he starts tearing into me with super sarcastic comments, like, "Oh, you're a red pro. I guess that means you're good," and on and on. And I was pretty harsh back at him, and then after 5 minutes, there's no chat, and now he types, "I think I owe you an apology." Now, I thought this was just some setup for another singer. Really? He's like,
you proceeded cautiously.
Yeah, I thought you were someone else. So it was a total case of mistaken identity. Not that he might not have been right that I do suck, but he didn't mean to.
Did you tell him that you were someone else?
No, I was happy to be someone else in this instance. So are you, but do you get the derisive chat?
I mean, it's so weird because sometimes it comes up in situations where you do something which seems perfectly normal and understandable and not, beyond all question. I mean, I went in on an Omaha, I went all in, where the board was Queen 10 deuce with 2 diamonds. And I had King Queen Jack 10. So I had up and down straight and 2 pair and no diamonds. And I think I had a backdoor flush too. But anyway, so that's my hand. One of the guys had the Jack 9 of the flush suit, and the other guy had Ace King of the flush suit. And basically they had no pairs, no anything. So if blanks came, I had the hand. If straights came, I had the hand. The only thing that would cost me is if diamonds came without a full house. So I tripled up in this hand. And now 3 guys launch into me how stupid I am to be playing this hand. And, it's like I'm going to win 50% of the time against 2 people. And I just was, it boggled my mind. What are they thinking?
Sometimes you don't even know how to start to respond.
Right,
because, I mean, Adam, I don't know if you...
And I do enough wrong stuff that they could find. There's plenty of stuff I do they could pick on, but
where did this idea
why this
of
one?
berating... Let's just say you did make a bad play, or I made a bad play. Why is it good to now tell me about it and berate me so, A, everyone at the table learns what a good play and bad play is, and I learn?
Well, I mean, and also, instead of saying, well, what were you thinking,
and
trying to learn something from it, or, why did you call that guy, what made you think he was bluffing, or anything that would be constructive, they want to just say, well, you're really terrible, and so forth and so on.
I mean, Adam always uses this phrase with me. I don't know if it's original or not, but it's perfect, which is the chat tilter.
I love the chat tilter. That's one of my favorite notes. If someone chat tilts, I know they can't be that good.
That tells you something about them. And it's funny. I love playing the horse tournament. Any size I'll play almost any night. And there's certain guys who are always in the tournament. There's one guy in particular that I've told Adam about because he can be winning, he can be losing. Every hand he loses, he has like 3 or 4 comments. Whoever wins, it's just automatic. So I was playing in the tournament, and they read to the tables. Now at the final table, and he gets moved to the table. And I said to Adam, "This guy's on my left. Same guy who." And next hand I beat him, and I said, "It's coming." and 5 seconds later, there's like good play, dog, tons of stuff. But it's amazing. And the same guy, a couple of hands later, we're playing stud 8. I started with a 2, 3, 4, and then I caught a 5 on 4th. So I had 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's it
was a good start.
Hand stud 8. Yeah,
and
solid starting value.
This guy had raised with a king showing, so it was almost certain he's really not. A bluffer that he had split kings, and then he caught any card, doesn't matter, on 4th, and now he bet and I raised him. But then on 5th I bricked, and he checked to me and I checked behind. Now on 6th he bet and I just called because I bricked again. Then on 7th I catch a 6, so now I have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's got no low cards showing, and he bets and I raise. It's kind of an inopportune bet on his part. He'd never improved, and I win the hand. And I said to Adam, because it's the same guy, I said, "I don't think here he can come up with a comment." And then he wrote, "Nice catch, sir."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Nice catch." When you start with 2, 3, 4, 5 and stud 8, and you catch a 6 on the river, that's really not the traditional nice catch.
And he had checked on 5, just giving you one more free chance.
But that's one of the enjoyable aspects of.
Actually,
at first I used
entertaining.
to have my chat off and think that it would just upset me. Not even if I was involved, just seeing other people with their terrible chat. But now it is entertaining, and it does really clue you into what people's state of mind is.
Z, you played in New York. I never played at the Mayfair or the Diamond Club, but I just wish I knew what the Mayfair was like. In a way, it's like I tell these, like now they're kids, like 21 years old, that never played at Binion's, and they can't really understand what it was like. Give us a little flavor of Mayfair. Were you guys dealing yourselves?
We dealt ourselves.
See, I wouldn't have made it.
Yeah, I can't deal. I can't
even deal. But second, I'd be like so paranoid.
Well, it also drives us crazy when we see the dealers that they have here who can't.
They can't deal either.
They can't deal either, and they're being paid to deal. That's their job. Well, there's a famous Mayfair story. Billy Horan, who was a great backgammon player, and a very strong poker player, maybe with a little steam factor, but very nice guy. He helped Eric get
steamer.
he helped Eric get started in poker and taught Eric a lot, and helped us all really. We'd all go out to drink. Eric Seidel. We'd all go out to drink and talk afterwards about the hands and things like that. So he also introduced Eric to his wife. So he's got many accomplishments. So we're playing in the game, and normally it was regulars, but some people who I think were supposed to be from Vegas drifted in. And they started playing, and I felt something fishy was going on, and I just quit very early. Because they won a hand that didn't make sense to me. And as they say, we're dealing ourselves. Normally the procedure was one guy would shuffle, the guy on the other side would cut, and the middle guy would deal.
Right.
And we played with 2 decks at once, so the guy who had just dealt would pick up the old cards and start shuffling. So you could get in a lot more hands an hour. It was better than an automatic shuffling machine. Right. And so now, I guess Billy suspected something was going on, and a hand came up between Billy Horan, Jason Lester, and one of these guys. And there's, on the flop, Jason has ace-king, Billy has 2 aces, and this guy's hand is unknown, and the flop is ace-king-deuce, let's say. So now, lots of betting goes on, and it ends up with, let's say, the Vegas guy has another $500 left, Billy has another $500 left, Jason is all in, and the guy is getting ready to deal 4th Street, and Billy asks for a cut. The guy says, no, you can't cut in the middle of a hand. And the Mayfair rule was just for this kind of situation, if there was a card or a questionable thing, anybody could ask for a cut at any time. You weren't allowed to abuse it, but certainly in a big pot it was an ideal time. So the guy just kind of turns white. The cards are cut. You know, the next card is a 6, and Billy bets his last 500, and this guy folds. And a $50,000 pot, and he folds for 500 because whatever his out was gone now. You know?
Yeah.
And
There's
after
no
that,
sense showing that he had a 4-5 and was about to catch the 3 or something.
exactly. And
That's a great.
one of the legendary stories that comes out of the old Mayfair days, although it didn't take place at the Mayfair. Eric Seidel is not only a great poker player, but in those days was also a great backgammon player, and he's very, very close with his mother. And somebody who was called Teddy the Kid hustled his mother at Scrabble. And Eric vowed to get revenge on Teddy the Kid. Now, it's not so easy to get revenge on a specific person because the right situation has to come up. Somehow it happens around Christmas time, there's a heavy snowfall, and they're at a place called the Game Room playing backgammon, and Eric and Teddy start playing, and Eric wins all of Teddy's money, which to most of us you would think, well, now I've gotten my revenge.
Right.
Eric is by no means satisfied, and Teddy is begging and pleading to borrow money, to have some credit. Eric says, no, no, no. Finally he says, okay, I tell you what I'll do. I'll give you $50 credit for your boots. So Eric now wins Teddy's boots and makes him go home barefoot in 8 inches of snow in the dead of winter.
Don't cross Eric.
So don't cross
And then he
Eric's
presented
side
the
down.
boots to his mom.
Yeah, but I think he had one as a trophy on his mantelpiece. I don't know if he still has it or not.
I like that because Eric is so low-key and mature, but, you know,
Yeah.
he's got to
He's
cross his
dark side,
mother. He's gotta- he's
You
gonna do
just
what he
don't
has to
mess
do.
with my family, right?
Yeah.
I love it.
See, now
Not
you
to
don't
come
have
back.
you don't get to play with road agents, flim-flam men, short con guys. You got all that.
Well, you get enough people, I'm sure, who try and push cards and bend cards and whatever. And I mean, the World Series is terrible about replacing cards. I mean, they just are.
But the cards have improved a lot because 2 years ago, the cards were such poor quality that they were just filled with marks and, you know, intentional or
Now the
not.
guys have to work a lot harder than that.
Right. You got your job set up. See, what do you know? You're a thinking man's gambler, so I'd be interested in your opinion of the new format with the final table, moving it forward.
I love it. I mean, I think
I'm with you.
it's going to be good for poker, it'll be good marketing, good everything. If I'm, God willing, if I'm one of the people who makes it, you know, I'm going to get an agent, try and find things, wear anything that doesn't conflict with whatever the Harris regulations are, you know.
Clown suit.
I wasn't thinking of the clown suit. I was thinking of, you know, try and have an advertisement for a good casino, you know, have nice Bellagio,
Yeah, I don't think
a
that-
good light beer, you know, instead of Milwaukee's Best Light, maybe Amstel Light or one which really tastes like beer, you know, some stuff like that. But I think those are ruled out.
You've already ruled some out apparently.
But
Are you playing a lot of events this year?
I've been playing a lot. Oh, one of the things, you know, you going back to your previous thread about the less big game action, one of the things that's happened is this year a huge number of the high stakes players have bracelet bets on who get bracelets and how many bracelets. So you have, you know, Phil Ivey was saying, I'm going to play in the ladies tournament if I get knocked out of the stuff. You know, it's like when you have $4 million worth of bracelets bets.
And the rebuy events take kind of different tenor as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, last night in the deuce with rebuys, I think at the end of 2 hours, there was one table with one rebuy, or no rebuys. Right. And the table where Phil and Todd Brunson were had 30 rebuys. Because they just buy the max, go all in, buy the max, go all in, because they wanted to be a chip leader at the end of the rebuy period.
Yep. Steve, we'll look for you to add to your triumphs. I know there's no Chinese poker event this year, but maybe in one of the...
That's probably why I'm doing so... I was trying to figure out why my results suck. Now I know.
You've always done well in all the games. We'll look for you. And we thank you for coming by and joining us on The Scoop.
Thanks, Z.
Thanks for joining us on The Scoop, brought to you by Phil Told Poker. Make sure to write us at thescoop at cardplayer.com and join us again soon.
2 bracelets. Awesome.
Well, you know, these aren't easy to win. I remember this one like it was yesterday. My opponent had me down to my left. Sorry. Anyway, it's down to my last few chips. So I had to call.
We play at FullTailPoker.com.